Every day, 20 massive oil tankers pass through a narrow strip of water no wider than a highway. That waterway is called the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of all the oil in the world flows through this one spot. Today, the United States just made its biggest move there in years, and Iran is feeling the heat like never before. Keep watching. What happens next could raise the price of everything you buy. Here is what we are breaking down today. First, why this tiny waterway matters more than any other place on Earth right now. Second, what the US just did and why it is a huge deal that few people are paying attention to. Third, the part nobody else is talking about. The angle that could completely change how this story ends. This matters because it affects the gas in your car, the food on your table, and maybe even whether you can afford the things you need next year. Let us get into it. To understand why this matters, you need to know where the Strait of Hormuz is and why it is so special. Picture a thin strip of water squeezed between two countries. On one side is Iran. On the other side is Oman. Both are countries in the Middle East, the region that also includes Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and many others. This strip of water is only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. For comparison, most highways have at least 4 lanes. So this waterway is not even as wide as a big city highway. Now here is the key thing you need to understand. Imagine a highway with only one exit ramp. If someone blocks that ramp, nobody can leave. Every car, truck, and bus is stuck. They cannot get where they need to go. That is exactly what the Strait of Hormuz is for the world of oil. About 1/5 of all oil used in the world comes through this narrow passage every single day. That is a massive amount. It is like 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil in the entire world. Now think about what that oil does. That oil powers cars, trucks, airplanes, and factories. It heats homes in cold weather. It also makes plastic. Yes, plastic. The bottles you drink from, the bags you carry groceries in, the packaging that holds almost everything you buy. For decades, Iran understood this power. It used this waterway like a weapon, like a card it could play whenever it wanted something from other countries. Whenever other countries upset Iran, it would threaten to block this waterway. It would say, do what we want or no oil gets through. It was like holding the entire world hostage. And for a long time, nobody dared call its bluff. Nobody wanted to risk an all-out conflict over a piece of water. But that is changing. Right now, as we speak. Now let us talk about what the United States just did. This is where the story gets really important. The US military just fired on and disabled 2 Iranian tankers. Tanker is another word for a big ship that carries oil. These were ships flying Iran's flag. Ships owned by Iran. The US said Iran tried to attack American ships in the Strait. American ships that were just doing their job, passing through international waters, so the US fought back. It stopped those attacks. But this was not some small incident in the background. This is a direct military clash between the two countries. For years, the US and Iran have been circling each other like fighters in a ring. They traded insults. They imposed penalties on each other. They pointed fingers, but neither side ever really threw a punch. Until now, think of it like this. Imagine 2 kids on a playground. One kid keeps pushing and threatening to take the ball away. He says, give me your lunch money or I will block the door. For a long time, the other kid just steps aside and lets it happen. But now the second kid has had enough. The other kid finally says, okay, take it. I will play something else. That is what just happened with the US and Iran. The US went from warning Iran to actually fighting back, and it did not stop there. The US also set up what is called a blockade. A blockade is when one country blocks another from moving ships in or out. Think of it like putting a fence around someone's property. Now they cannot come in or go out without permission. The US said 41 tankers carrying 69 million barrels of oil are now stuck. They cannot move. They are trapped. They cannot get in and they cannot get out. Iran's oil cannot reach buyers in other countries. This is a massive number. 69 million barrels is enough oil to fill an Olympic swimming pool more than 40 times. That is a lot of oil, and it is just sitting there. Iran has been using its control over this waterway as its biggest bargaining chip for decades. It was the one thing that made other countries listen. And now that chip just got much weaker. Here is where it gets really interesting. You might think this is just about oil and military power. But there is another layer that most news channels will not tell you about. The real story is what this means for Iran inside its own country. When a country faces outside pressure like this, the people inside feel it first. This is what happened in many countries throughout history. Prices for food go up. Jobs disappear. The value of their money drops. People cannot afford the basics anymore. And the government has to make hard choices. Iran has been dealing with heavy economic penalties from other countries for years. These penalties have a name. They are called sanctions. A sanction is when other countries refuse to do business with you. They do this to try to make a country change its behavior. Think of it like this. Imagine everyone in your school stops talking to one kid. Nobody sits with them at lunch. Nobody wants to be their partner for projects. They do this to try to make that kid apologize or change what they did. That is what sanctions are like, but between countries. Iran has been under these sanctions for a long time. Its economy has been struggling for years. People inside Iran have been dealing with high prices and few job opportunities. Now, with the US taking direct military action, those sanctions are about to get even stronger. Countries that were on the fence about cutting ties with Iran are now picking sides. More countries are choosing to work with the US instead of Iran. This is slowly choking Iran's economy from the inside. And when a country's economy collapses, its government has fewer options. They cannot pay for their military. They cannot fund their programs. Sometimes they become desperate, and desperate governments do desperate things. That is what experts call a dangerous moment. Now let us talk about how this affects you and your family. You might be thinking this is happening thousands of miles away in the Middle East. I live in the United States. How does this hit my wallet? Let me explain it in a way that makes sense. When oil supply gets disrupted, oil prices go up. It is simple supply and demand. When something becomes harder to get, it costs more. When oil prices go up, gas prices go up at the pump. When gas prices go up, it costs more to truck food to the grocery store. Trucks run on gas. Shipping companies run on gas. And when it costs more to ship food, grocery prices go up too. Everything gets more expensive. From the food you eat to the things you buy. This is called a chain reaction. One thing leads to another and another. Experts estimate that if the Strait of Hormuz closes even for a few weeks, gas prices in the U.S. could jump by $1 to $2 per gallon. Right now, the average American family spends about $200 a month on gas. If prices jump by just $1 per gallon, that is an extra $40 gone every month. That is money that does not go to groceries, bills, or savings. Now multiply that by every family in the country. It adds up to billions of extra dollars leaving people's pockets. And it is not just gas. Heating your home in winter could cost more. Flying to visit family could cost more. Buying anything made with plastic could cost more. The global oil market is like a web connecting every country. Every person in the world is part of that web in some way. When one thread snaps, the whole web feels it. You do not need to live in the Middle East to feel the impact. So what happens next? Nobody knows for sure. This is uncharted territory in many ways. But there are two main paths this story could take. Path one, things go well. The U.S. keeps up the pressure. Iran realizes it cannot win this fight. Iran backs down. Negotiations start. Iran agrees to stop threatening the waterway. In exchange, sanctions start to get lifted slowly. Oil flow returns to normal. Prices stabilize. Grocery bills stay manageable. Gas stays affordable. This is the good path. The path where your life does not change too much. Path two, things go badly. Iran refuses to back down. It makes good on its threat to close the strait completely. No oil ships pass through. Oil prices skyrocket overnight. Grocery costs follow. Shipping companies charge more for everything. Countries go into economic panic. Governments scramble to find alternatives. The U.S. might have to send even more troops to the region. And the conflict could spread to other countries in the Middle East. This is the bad path. The path where things get very expensive and very dangerous. Both paths are possible right now. The next few weeks and months will decide which one we get. So here is what you need to remember when you leave this video. 3 things. That is all. Simple and clear. First, the Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of the world's oil. This tiny waterway is the most important piece of geography on Earth right now. Second, the United States just showed Iran it is done playing nice. It fired on Iranian ships. It set up a blockade. And Iran is losing its grip on the one thing that gave it power. Third, the hidden story is how economic pressure from outside is creating chaos inside Iran. The people there are already struggling, and things are about to get worse. That desperation could lead to moves nobody can predict. All of this adds up to one of the most dangerous moments in global oil history. Will Iran blink first? Will the strait stay open? Or are we heading toward a full shutdown that sends prices through the roof? Hit subscribe now because this story is moving fast. New developments are coming every single day. The situation could change by tomorrow, and you do not want to miss the next update when it happens. I will see you in the next one.